Welcome to the Animal Aspirations Podcast. My name is Lavinia, and through this series, we're going to speak to some inspirational people in the veterinary profession. Animal Aspirations is a student-led organization founded in 2019 with the aims of encouraging diversity within the veterinary profession and promoting positive role models. In this episode, we talk to the co-founders of Animal Aspirations about how they started this organization. I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me today. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
My name is Lavinia. I recently graduated from the Royal Veterinary College and I'm currently living in Norfolk. And I have a job as a small animal vet in a hospital. And also founded Animal Aspirations.
Hi, I'm Steph. Thank you for having us on the podcast. So I've also graduated this year from the Royal Veterinary College. I'm yet to start work, but I'm going to be moving down to South London to start working in a small animal first opinion practice. And with Lavinia, I helped to found Animal Aspirations.
Lovely. So there's a lot of talk about animal aspirations. This whole podcast series is called the Animal Aspirations Podcast, but there's no point us just saying out this word when we don't really know what it means. So would you mind just talking to us a bit about what animal aspirations actually is?
Sure, go ahead, Lavinia. You go start, get started. Yeah.
Well, I suppose we started Animal Aspirations because before it had began, there was nothing that existed beforehand, and there was nothing that addressed the issues that Animal Aspirations now does. So the aim of it was basically kind of to encourage young people like us to consider a career working with animals, and I think that's something that was definitely lacking when I was applying to vet school. So what I did was I was with Steph, and we were talking about how this was an issue, and we just came up with this idea that maybe we should, if we want a problem fixed, we should try and do it ourselves. So we started this kind of cool group student project.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So they were kind of working on some bits already at the RVC, and there was a couple of kind of student-led things that were kind of backed by the RVC outreach team. And so kind of we already had a couple of contacts, and so we thought, you know what, we can definitely get some, backing of the RVC behind this as well. And so it's completely student-led, but we got a bit of help from the RVC at the beginning, just to set it up as well. So, yeah.
Wow, it's so cool. I just want to know how you actually make an organization. What was the sort of first step that you were okay, this is something we've addressed that is missing and we're going to fix it, but how do you go about tackling something like that?
So I guess I'd done some stuff as student ambassador before, so I had quite a gist of what was happening already, and I think that was quite key for us wanting to start the group, was that we knew what they were already doing and we knew they could be doing more. And so that was definitely the best starting point for us, was kind of already having done some market research essentially without even realizing it. So then, like I said, we got in contact with the outreach team at the RVC. We spoke to a couple of the people that were running it, specifically Grace. She was really helpful, and we kind of set up a couple of meetings, got some students together as well. There's a couple of student ambassadors that were already working for the RVC as ambassadors that were interested, got a couple more people involved, and kind of went from there, really.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add to that was definitely the RVC widening participation team was really supported us to begin, and we probably wouldn't be able to start it off if it wasn't for their help, especially for me. Unlike Steph, I had no experience with being an ambassador. I'd never, organised a group project or anything like that, or spoken in front of people. I was actually really nervous. I remember when I organised the first team meeting after we sent an email out recruiting students, and I organised the first team meeting, and I was so nervous. I prepared a presentation beforehand, and I didn't know how it was going to go because it was this completely new idea, and I wasn't sure whether they'd like it. But they reacted to it really well. I've got a picture of the first team meeting presentation that I did, and since then it kind of we didn't take off, but it was hard work was put into it. But everyone received it really well, and yeah, it took off. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely took off. Don't play it down, it took off.
No, it's done very well. I just wanted to talk a little bit about like before this was you realized this was something you wanted to do. Like, what was your journey into veterinary like in the first place? Like, how did you get to be at the RVC?
So I took a bit of a scenic route to get here. So I did my GCSEs and A levels, and I didn't actually get into veterinary medicine first time round. I'd wanted to be a vet since, you know, I was tiny. And so it'd always been a goal for me. Got to A levels, and yeah, it just didn't happen. And it was really hard at the time, but kind of had to just pick myself up, and I was like, okay, what can I do next? So a lot of people were like, the best option is to do an undergraduate course in a different subject, as long as it's related. Just check with the uni websites what courses qualify. And so I ended up doing zoology at the University of Nottingham. And then once I was coming to my final year, I reapplied for veterinary medicine and got into the RVC. I then took a year out just to work. I'd kind of gone pretty deep into my overdraft at that point. So I was like, okay, need to get a bit of money behind me before I go back to studying, especially because, and this is something that not many people really mentioned when I'd made my original plan, you don't get funding for your second degree. So you can get a maintenance loan, but you can't get a tuition fee loan. And so I found that out a bit late in the game. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have to work for a year. I worked in kind of like clothing merchandising. And then, yeah, I started at the RVC, did my 5 years, and now we're here.
Well done, Steph. Yeah, well, mine's it's like almost the opposite. In fact, that I didn't actually want to be a vet since I was young, and I only decided when I was quite late, probably year 12. And it kind of came about where I've always loved animals and I've always grown up around animals, but I didn't really know what I wanted to be. And then I kind of, somebody mentioned being a vet, and I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting because, you know, I like the science and medicine aspect of it, and we get to work with animals as well as people. So I remember like going to my careers advisor and being like, I really want to be a vet. And then my careers advisor was like, I don't really think you can. Your predicted grades are all like C's and D's. Probably try and consider to do something else. Have you tried like equine physiotherapy? I don't know where they got that from. I've never showed an interest in horses. And yeah, I just remember walking out there like completely devastated, like crying. And that was the first time somebody's told me that I wasn't able to do something. I went back home and I told my mum about it. And she's like, you know, she's someone that doesn't take no for an answer. And she was like, you just need to show them that you can do it. So from that, I just worked so hard. Like every single weekend, every single bank holiday, Easter holiday, Christmas holiday, I was doing EMS because there was like a ridiculous amount of requirements then. And especially if you decided late, it was so difficult to get the same amount of weeks compared to people who've always known they wanted to be a vet. I was like studying. I remember I used to have a Saturday job. I used to wake up at like 5 and do revision and then come back and do more revision, and then trying to get my predicted grades up so that I'd get an offer. And yeah, I went to the interview. I was so nervous and I managed to get an offer. And I remember when I got that offer, like me and my mum both burst out crying because I worked so hard for it. And even now I look back at myself and I'm so proud. I've never worked that hard ever. Probably won't work ever that hard, but basically there's a reason why I think I have started Animal Aspirations is because I know what it's like to be underestimated. And I think, you know, if I didn't have someone like my mum, or if I was different, I probably would have listened to them, and then I would never have been here. So I just want to, that's why part of the reason I want to be Animal Aspirations, to make sure that I let people know that you can do it if you put your mind to it.
Absolutely.
Lovely words there. And what year were you in when you like founded Animal Aspirations?
I was intercalating. So I did an intercalated degree at the RVC between my 3rd and 4th year. And I kind of did that to have a bit of a break from the RVC, from veterinary course, just because I'd gone straight into it. And I wanted some time to like explore my other interests. So I think I did it like a language class then, and also going into sports. And that because of that degree, I had a lot more time on my hands to invest and start the project up. I know that you're in your fourth
Must
year?
have been.
You're in your third year.
Was it third year? Yeah, it must have been third year because when you were integrating, we'd kind of met through a mutual friend who'd met Lavinia on the intercalation. And so, yeah, I was in third year. So just getting into the clinical years of the course. So the course is kind of split up that you have 2 years of kind of preclinical stuff where you learn like anatomy, physiology, these kind of things. And then from third year to fifth year, that's when you start your clinical work. So you're doing more like clinical placements, you're working in the hospitals, and on your placements kind of externally as well. You're based more in vet practices as opposed to doing more kind of like animal care stuff, which they focus on in the first few years. So yeah, it was a kind of you say that you had, more spare time, but it was still a busy time for both of us, I think. So yeah, it was still something we really wanted to do. So we just thought, let's just start now. The longer we wait, the deeper into uni you get and the more hard work there is to be done. So yeah.
I only asked that because in your first, second and third year, did you feel like an absence of like a community between because I feel like from Animal Aspirations now, the organization that you've created and the people that are involved, it feels like a nice community. But because that wasn't a thing, I've only experienced uni life with that. But because that wasn't a thing before, did you feel an absence of that?
Yeah, definitely. Like I look back at what we have now and just like all the amazing people are part of it. And I'm almost jealous. I wish that kind of I started with first year and kind of grew up and we've all become such good friends because we're so similar. And I think there was definitely, especially because I came from a school kind of outside of London, but still quite diverse. And then going into the RVC, there was such a contrast. So it's so nice to have seen the organisation grow and more people, different types of people joining. And yeah, I think I definitely was an absence, and that's probably part of it. I think there's two ways, like we help young people to consider careers of animals, but we're also helping each other because we're all from similar backgrounds and we all mutually help each other in our course. So it's kind of a two-way thing.
Yeah. Definitely agree. And it was interesting as well because I've done my degree at Nottingham and it's such a big uni compared to the RVC. And so they do just have the scope for so many more different societies and clubs. Whereas I guess at the RVC, and through no fault of the students that are going there, because there's so few of you, there's quite a limited amount of clubs and sports and societies. So it's mainly based around sports. There's societies to do with kind of music and drama and those kind of things. But I think, for kind of the members of Animal Aspirations now, there's nothing really specifically for us in terms of just, meeting like-minded people, doing some activities that aren't just, sports or, going out drinking, which can be quite big in university culture. And so it was nice to be able to carve out that space for people that were interested in not just helping young people to come into veterinary, like Lavinia said. It's also wanting to meet like-minded people and improve your university experience as well, because that's a big thing that I think a lot of people forget, is that you need to study really hard, and veterinary, any course actually, you have to study really hard to get to the end. But I think also a really big part of university is that experience of the people you meet and the things you do. And so it's been really great to see you guys kind of form this bond and kind of become this nice little Aspirations family. It's nice.
I definitely feel you guys have made such a wonderful community for my year and the years below me. I just wanted to ask, what was your aim starting Animal Aspirations? Obviously you wanted to try and do outreach work and encourage people, but what were your starting points? What were the things that you were this is something that I know that we can do, so we're going to try and do this?
So we kind of sat down and did a bit of a brainstorm with a couple of other students. And I think the main things that we kind of started out targeting were the information you get at school. I remember that was quite a big thing that we kept talking about, how there's so many kind of things that you wish you knew, or that your teachers either didn't have the time or maybe they just didn't care enough to kind of do the extra work to help, which I think a lot of people who are from wealthier backgrounds, and unfortunately that also aligns with mostly being from white backgrounds as well, they have really good support from their teachers. They have a dedicated careers advisor who's, you know, really focusing on getting them into these universities, whereas, you know, quite a few people from kind of multicultural backgrounds and also less financially, what's the word? People with less money, essentially, you go to these schools and they've got less resources. And so we were kind of thinking, okay, what can we really bring out that's going to help our target audience? And I think our biggest thing that we did at the start, which we were really proud of and is still really special, is our kind of handbook that we'd made. And it was basically just about how to get into vet school or into nursing or into biosciences, just the key points that we had felt like we'd missed out on when we were applying to uni. And then I feel like from there it grew. So we were then looking at workshops to help people just to get a feel of what it's like actually being at university, meet university students, because again, not many people have the opportunity to either have siblings or relations or friends that have gone to uni. And so it kind of grew from there, I think.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add on to that, I think in addition to like brainstorming and thinking like, okay, what did we wish we knew when we wanted to apply for veterinary? The other thing is having role models, and we thought that that was something that was definitely lacking in the veterinary profession, that there was like an absence, I'd say, an absence of kind of like role models from diverse backgrounds. And, you know, I think it's definitely changed now, but when I started, they still had that kind of like James Herriot type of idea of the veterinary profession. And when somebody said a vet, you know, they wouldn't imagine someone, you know, who was brown or black or, you know, Indian. And so we wanted to like show that there are people like you who are doing veterinary, and, you know, we can come from all different backgrounds, and, you know, it's such an amazing profession, and it could suit you. And I think that was something that's definitely been lacking. And I think that's kind of why Animal Aspiration took off so fast, because it was kind of the first to kind of, if not realize it, do something about it. And, you know, the veterinary profession clocked on, and they're like, actually, yeah, we do need to like get behind this, because this is something that we're not doing. Yeah, so I think that's probably another thing that probably differentiated us from other outreach projects in the past, because as Steph said, the WP team, and I know there was other initiatives in the past, but there was nothing that was so focused on like role models from diverse backgrounds. And I think that's what was kind of almost like a unique selling point.
Yeah, and it's relatable role models as well. I think that was the really key point that kind of made us stand out so much, is that it was students kind of that are already going through it, and they are, you know, when you're 18, it's really hard to see yourself in people that are, you know, already 20 years qualified and, you know, off on their path. Whereas I think it was really nice that the role models that we have kind of created through Animal Aspirations have all been you know, essentially the same age. We're all in the same age group, really. And so I think that also just helps people to see like, oh, actually, you know what, that could be me. Like, they look like me, that is me. So I can do it too.
It makes it more attainable, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really interesting that you bring up the point about like visibility, because even me choosing vet schools, like when I was doing the offer holder days and the open days, I went to like the different ones, and I was looking and I was like, like I was the only one of the cohort like applying to get in, and I was like there was no ambassadors that looked like me. There was like nothing. And then when I came to the RVCS, I was like, oh, there's some ambassadors, or like there are some people. So even if it wasn't like they were being a specific role model in this sort of capacity where it's like, oh, I'm like be a vet and this is the outreach work that I'm doing, it was like just the fact that there were people there as a presence, I think made such a big impact on my like decision to come to the RVC. So I think, as well as being a relatable role model, I think just being there, just the fact that we are there as a presence, like you said, has already boosted so much for other organizations and the rest of the veterinary community to be like, this is an issue that we need to focus on. Now, you've talked about two different things already: the student handbook, which I think is really useful because there are a lot of things that you learn going through the process that you wish you're like, oh, that would have been so useful if I'd learned. Like, one thing I remember is you do all these work experience places and then you get to apply and they're like, so you need a reference from everyone. You need like a written reference of like saying that you were there at that time. And I'd done these placements like a year ago and I didn't have a reference. So I was like, oh my God, I gotta like call them up like, hi, I came a year ago. I don't know if you remember me, but can you just write me a reference? So having something that people can look to, I think, is really useful. But also workshops. What kind of how did you come about deciding that the workshop was like the next like investment of things that you could be doing, and how did you like make up the content of a workshop that you think would be interesting for like secondary school kids to learn about?
Yeah, I think the workshops was, again, it was like the basis of that. It was about role models. So that was the kind of the primary, us just going there and just saying, hey, we exist and this is something you can consider. But probably we kind of like sat down and thought, what were the aims of our workshops? And one of them was kind of like, we want to give them a glimpse of what it's like to be a vet. Because I feel like there is quite a lot of misconceptions. I think that's another thing that we kind of discussed. There's like misconceptions of the profession, like, again, that James Herriot kind of, I don't know, imagery, I think is quite, I don't know, puts quite a lot of people off. Also just people kind of, if they haven't grown up around animals, they might think that, you know, you're just basically a, I don't know, suburban vet giving vaccines to dogs and cats. I mean, that can be true, but it doesn't have to be true. And that's what we were trying to show in our workshops. Like so one of the main themes is that it's the diversity of like what you can do as a vet. So one of our stations is where we like talk through a clinical case scenario. So just a typical one, like a dog vomiting, and getting them to show them that actually there's a lot of problem solving and thinking and science that's applied to it in order to do it. And then we also show like, get them to do kind of like histology slides. So just to show that the more of like the bioscience side of things. And again, just showing how like what they learn in biology can be applied to, you know, what they do as a vet. So yeah, it was basically just, the main theme is like just to show kind of like you can do lots of things. You don't have to be this one idea of a vet that most people have. And you get quite a lot of students that want to be like doctors, but actually there's so many things that are similar, but also in some ways better than, so I say like when you're a vet, you can be the dentist, the surgeon, the GP. And there's just so much that you can do, and that's just within a small animal vet role. I don't think many people know that. So that's something that we try to promote during a workshop.
And we also kind of tried to highlight as well, on top of the diversity within veterinary, the diversity just in the kind of animal profession as a whole, because I think a lot of students as well came to us and thought, oh, well, I like animals, but, you know, I don't really want to be a vet because I'm not really sure that I'd like, you know, the euthanasia side. I'm not sure if I'd actually want to work in a veterinary practice or be on a farm, but I really like animals, but I just don't know anywhere else that I can kind of go into. And so it's kind of highlighting to them as well, like, there's such a broad amount of things that you can do. Just because you like animals doesn't mean you just have to be a vet and that's all. You know, we try to highlight that, you know, if you've enjoyed this little bit of the session, so the problem solving bit, then you could maybe go into kind of research science. If you've enjoyed the practical bit where we're doing like the bandaging and the animal care, but you don't think you like the sciencey side as much, you could look into nursing, and then you can still progress from there. If you do think, actually, I want to do a bit more, I want to do some more learning, I do want to go a bit more into the sciencey side, just like opening that door to them and saying, these are all your options here. And then even the students that come that don't actually want to work with animals, in the end of the session, you still get them being like, oh, that was pretty cool. Like, they then can disseminate that information back into their communities, back to their parents, back to their friends. And then slowly, hopefully, it kind of spreads out that it's seen as more of a kind of tangible option for people from backgrounds. Because I think, like Lavinia said, a lot of people from ethnic minority backgrounds do tend to kind of prioritize roles such as human medicine, dentistry, those kind of things. And so I think if we can get out in the community more, that there's all these other options that are just as great, they're going to challenge you just as much, and you're going to kind of be respected in the community just as much as well, then those are also really good things to kind of spread awareness on.
Do you remember your first workshop, like the first time you went to a school and you like presented it and you were like, did you feel nervous beforehand? Like, people are going to like this? Like, did you have a good reception? What was that like?
So I think the first one was at the RVC, wasn't it? So the widening participation team from the RVC, who've been great throughout, they'd kind of got a school that they thought, you know what, the children from this school would be really interested. They're kind of quite good, interactive kind of young people that would be coming. And so they'd invited us to the RVC, and we'd set it up. And yeah, I think we were a bit nervous. We had kind of planned it all, sat down, sorted out all the stations. We had our t-shirts on, and it was it was a really good moment for us. I think we were all really proud, like especially at the end when it was like done and
we were
like the
so
last
happy.
few students worked out. We were all just like,
yeah, and we got really good feedback, and I just remember thinking like, yeah, okay, this is why it was all worth it, like all the hard work that we've done, just to show that like they were just really keen, enthusiastic, and asking questions. And as like Steph said, like they might not necessarily walk out being like, I want to be a vet, but they just learned something new that they can like like Steph said, disseminate to their community, tell their parents, tell their friends. Yeah, it was really, I always get a thrill. Even now, I did my last workshop a month ago, and even at the end, I was just, it's like the same feeling of just being like really, what's it called? Satisfied or no, like fulfilled, like really fulfilling. Like you really done something really good, and I'd enjoyed it and they'd enjoy it. Yeah.
That's so nice. How do you feel that this like little project that you've made is just like kept growing? Because I remember the year I joined RVC was the first year that you were taking on more students. So like, what was the conversation behind you realizing that actually this is something that needed to grow and you needed to like interview more people to try and join? And like, that's kind of changing the structure of what you already had. You had a small group, it was working, you were like, oh no, we can make this bigger. Like, how did that kind of work around the progression, the natural growth, I guess?
It was probably like a combination of things. I think first there was like a more demand in terms of like there was more workshops to schools that we could do, and that we needed more people. We only started out, I think it was like with 8 or 9 students in total, and that's really difficult because we all are full-time students and have other commitments, and trying to organize them to do the workshops is quite difficult. So there was that aspect of it, and then it was just kind of like just the reception in terms of like how the vet, like RVC, kind of like just really supported us and was like, this is a really good thing, this needs to like get bigger. And just like, I remember, I think we did a careers fair, or we had a careers fair stand, and it was talking to all the freshers, and just them, like all the freshers and just like students were like, this is a really amazing thing, this is something that like the older students were like, oh, this is something I wish that we had in first year, or younger ones are like, yeah, this is what I wish I had when I was like looking at vet schools and applying. And like young people, we're all very like, I don't know, we always want to like try and make the world a better place, and I think this gives a good avenue to do that at vet school. So you feel like you're doing something really good whilst kind of training, and I think the Animal Aspiration like fills that role quite well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's such a key point, isn't it? Like, people want to make a difference. That's why you go into veterinary, you want to make a difference. But it's so much kind of being like, oh, like once I graduate, then I'll make a difference. But people, they're ready now. And I think it goes back to what we discussed at the start about the kind of creating a community as well. Like, we had people contacting us before we'd even started kind of suggesting that we'd be looking for more people to join the team. They're kind of like, oh, like, we've seen what you do, like, we're so interested in what you're working on, like, we'd love to get involved in any way. So I think people saw it and they were like, oh, I just want to be part of this community. Like, I'm finally seeing that there's people at my university that are interested in the same things as me, that have gone through similar experiences to me, and also who look like me as well, because like you say, there wasn't that many of us at the start. And so I think it's just a natural thing to want to kind of be around people that you can relate to.
Did you predict this growth, or was it kind of like each new stage that you came across, you were like, oh, this is really scary, but like, this is amazing that this is happening and we're just going to keep going and just see how it is? Or did you have like a plan of like things that you wanted to accomplish on like a timeline?
It was always going to be good. It was always going to take off. I think, I don't know, if I speak just for myself, I don't think we had a specific plan like for each step, but I think we knew from the beginning, from the reception that we got, that it was going to go far. I think even just from the idea that we had, we were like, this is sick, this is going to be good, this is what the veterinary profession needs.
Yeah, but I feel like I didn't realize how fast it come about. And also, like, I think it was a combination of both. Like, I always thought that it's something that they need and it's something that will be successful, but I didn't realize how fast, and just how. And each step, I just remember, like, for example, just like recruiting more students. Every step was like scary for me. Like, I always be nervous. And then I'd get to the next hurdle and then it'd be like, actually, we can do something else. Like, we can get even bigger. We can do this. So it was like each step, it was like, I realized that more and more what we can accomplish, and like kind of the goals that we set for ourselves just became bigger. Like the fact that we even have a website now, and that there's other vet schools that also have animal aspirations. Like when we started, I was just happy that we did a workshop. That was great for me. So the fact that, in 2 years' time, other vet schools are doing their own thing, with the Animal Aspirations name is,
Was there a moment where you were like, thought to yourself, like, we've done good, we've made it? Because again, like you're saying, like the fact that Animal Aspirations has branched out to all the other UK vet schools is a massive, like, congratulations. That's huge news. Mm-hmm. Was that like something that you were like, this is something that's just gonna, like, your legacy is just gonna live on forever? Like you felt like we've done well here?
I think the moment that pops into my head the quickest is I think we were invited, or maybe we asked to go, I can't really remember, to the vet school council meeting. And it was the moment when, like, we kind of joined the meeting because they'd already been discussing other things. And they were all like, we've heard so much about, like, Animal Aspirations. There's been, students at our unis that are already kind of pushing us to try and create their own Animal Aspirations. And so it was that moment of being like, all right, like, they really all know about it already, and that everyone was so keen to kind of get involved. Sorry, the Vet School Council, just to explain, is kind of the heads of all the vet schools. Is it in the UK? Just the UK?
Yeah. I think Dublin's included as well, and Utrecht.
And so it was really cool, that moment, just to be like, oh, okay, cool. Like we're already kind of in everyone's consciousness. And they're all very excited to back it as well. I think that was really, really exciting.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of me, and I think probably me was actually during lockdown. And it's funny because that's when we probably did the least in terms of workshops. But obviously that, the Black Lives Matter movement, and then we did that open letter, and then just the reception that we got from the profession, as well as like different staff members reaching out to us and students, and then just showing. For me, it was just show that we were so much more than, like, we were like giving support not only to prospective students but current, vet students, current vets. Like it was crazy how much of an impact I think that realized that, what we did and what we achieved. And I was like so proud of ourselves that we got to that point where, we really made a difference into people, and just by being there, people felt, that they were seen and that they were heard, and then we gave a platform for the different voices that are not usually heard in the veterinary profession. So I think that for me was the moment that I was like, okay, right, I've done good. We've done good.
And could you just explain like what was written in the open letter for those who, didn't get to read it or didn't know about it?
Sorry, go Steph. You go.
So it's actually still available to read on our website if people do want to read it. It's really good. And it was basically just, the opening sentence, which I think sums it up really well, is that we're not a kind of political, what's the word that we used? We're not a
political group?
Not a political group. That's not the specific word, but it's that general gist. Like, that's not why we set ourselves up. We're not here to be campaigning, for Black Lives Matter. Obviously, it's very important to all of us, but that's not why we set ourselves up. But then we just felt as a organisation we had a responsibility to speak up about it, because we are going to be encouraging people from ethnic minority backgrounds and Black people specifically at this time. We're encouraging them to come into the profession. And so we wanted to say, you know what, we can't encourage people into the profession knowing that our profession isn't standing up and doing their bit to support Black and brown people in the profession, because that would be essentially irresponsible. We're recruiting students in, we're saying to people, yeah, this is what you should do, this is a place for you. And then what we kind of got back in all this feedback that Lavinia was saying about before was that people don't feel supported, people don't feel like their voices are heard, people are having experiences when they're on placement, when they're in the university with other students, where they do feel like they have had racial abuse or kind of been put in awkward situations that have definitely been to do with racism, and yet they haven't known what the avenue is to be supported, and they haven't felt that they can talk about it. So we basically just wanted to say in the letter, like, this is it now, like the veterinary profession needs to do their bit too, otherwise we can't carry on doing what we're doing and encouraging people to come.
Did you feel like throughout Black Lives Matter in 2020, when there was a big movement of institutions looking towards themselves to try and make change, people came to you and they were like, give us a solution? Because I feel like a lot of the time with outreach work, especially with like ethnic minorities, especially visible ethnic minorities, there's a lot of assumption that we have the answers and that we know how to fix the solutions, and we can fix the problems that aren't even caused by us. There's nothing to do with us, but we're suffering from it, but we also have to provide a pathway to get out of it. So did you feel like a lot of people were kind of like, how do we fix this? And you were like, this is actually not our responsibility to fix.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. And I think that's the main point that we had. You know, the university did reach out to us and we did have meetings with the principals and other people. And that was kind of the main message. We were saying, this is an issue, but this is not an issue that should be fixed by us. This is not an additional burden that we have to carry. You have to lead this yourself. We're more than happy if you need advice, but the hard work has to come from the institution, not the people that are kind of, you know, discriminated against or suffering against that. And I think that was kind of like a key message that we had to, like, you know, we emphasize. And I think especially hard because as Animal Aspirations, we kind of go against that because we are trying to solve the issues that they should be solving themselves, essentially. You know, in an ideal world, there would be no need for, you know, a group like Animal Aspirations. But I think the university did listen to us, and they did set up kind of what they call the Race Equality Task Group, and they had kind of Animal Aspirations as like a representative to be like, and I was also I stood there as an Animal Aspiration representative, but my role was literally just to have an opinion on what their actions were. And I think, you know, they did get that at the end, but I think that is a really good point. Olivia,
do you sometimes feel like through what you've created, people just expect you to know what you're doing? Because at the end of the day, like, you didn't start off being public speakers, you guys didn't start off being like workshop leaders or creators. Like, these are all skills that you've learned. Did you feel like there was like an expectation for you to just like know how to do everything, or did you feel like, you know, you could make mistakes and then that from those mistakes you learned more?
I think it was a combination of both, really. I think we definitely just learned and grew like as we went through each step, to be honest. And as we grew in confidence, we kind of felt like we could do more. And I think it's just, for me, I think it was overcoming that hurdle of feeling like as a student, you can't kind of challenge people that are in these positions of authority. Yeah. And I think once we kind of got past that, well, for me personally, once we got past that, it did feel a lot easier to kind of be like, okay, like, it's an open conversation, we're all colleagues here and we can have that kind of free flow, and then you do just build confidence. But I don't think people had a big expectation on us. I don't think I felt like a weight of expectation from anyone except for ourselves. I think you just don't, once you start something, you don't want to kind of let yourself down or the people that you've already kind of encouraged to join down. So yeah.
Okay, so you guys, technically you've graduated and you're like working now, so you're no longer a part, you're co-founders, but you're no longer like, you know, you've left the organization, you know, we had a handover to the next like team. Is there any like goals that you kind of want to see for Animal Aspirations? Like, you just want to see its continued growth? Is there anything that you were like looking forward to in the future from Animal Aspirations?
Well, for me, I think like just with the vet schools, like I'd love to see, you know, Animal Aspirations like established the way that it is in the RVC and the other vet schools, just because, you know, not just, you know, for the students, you know, in the surrounding area. So the aim is that, you know, each vet school has Animal Aspirations and they target the schools, you know, that's targeted schools around their area, and that way we have a bigger impact. But also what we said, you know, earlier in the conversation, just that the community. And I just think every vet school needs that community, just people to rely on. And I would love in the future, if every vet school had Aspirations, we could all meet up almost like a national, you know, social or meet up, and just like continue having that, you know, really like support that I think is essential. And for me, it's been like probably one of the highlights of starting Animal Aspirations. So for me, like if I see that, I would be so happy.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think that would be super cool. I hope we get an invite as well.
Yeah.
If you guys do ever have kind of a big meetup, I'll be very upset if I just see it on Instagram.
Yeah, of course you guys are invited.
Thanks. But yeah, I think just if it's able to continue with, you know, students with the same amount of passion for it, if we keep kind of recruiting people in, and it would be really nice to start seeing people that have joined veterinary because of Animal Aspirations. I feel like that's going to be a real turning point when we get, and we've already had people that people have met at interviews that have been like, oh yeah, like I saw something on Instagram, or I met you at a workshop. So I think that moment when we see Animal Aspirations babies come into veterinary and get through the course and graduate as vets, that's going to be
You guys have done such an amazing job, like curating an organization from scratch with no like blueprint. You've just kind of figured it out by yourselves. It's become so successful. You have so many amazing people a part of it. So I think, like, round of applause to you. You guys have done such an amazing job. I'm so proud of you. I think you are just amazing people, and now you're going to be amazing vets, and you're just out there, and I think I'm just very proud of you, and I think you've done a great job. So round of applause.
Thank you, Olivia.
Round of applause to you as well, and to the rest of the team and everyone that's going to kind of carry it on. Like, I feel like there was definitely a point where I was kind of like, oh, this is quite hard, and then like you get all these new members coming in with so much vim, and they're like ready to go, and it keeps the momentum going. So well done you guys as well.
Olivia, yeah, we definitely, if people like you and Aspirations, we know that is going to good places. So thank you for being so passionate and starting this podcast. And I know everyone will enjoy the other episodes.
Yeah, we've got some great people coming up, so we're looking forward to listening to it as well.
Okay, I just wanted to finish up with, do you have any like inspirational mottos or quotes that like have helped you get through this 5-year degree and now you're graduating? Is there anything that like has stuck with you that you think's important or that you couldn't care to share?
I think I've got two. So my first one is quite cliche, but everything does happen for a reason. I think especially as a young person at school and you set your sights on something and not everything goes right and it can feel really crushing at the time. Everything happens for a reason. The time will come that it's meant to be. If you've done your best, if you've worked your hardest, if you've given your all, then it will happen. But it just might not be the path that you expect. And then my other one, my mum says this all the time to me, is that the worst someone can say is no. And I think obviously in the broad scheme of things, people can say worse things, yes. But professionally, if you want something, if you want to ask for a placement, if you want to kind of ask for a job in a practice that you've just been doing work experience at, if you want to get a bit more help with some work at uni, if you ask someone, the very worst they're going to say is no to you. And that's not the end of the world. But I think you can get yourself really worked up and nervous about asking for things, especially when you're applying for uni and you're trying to gather work experience. It can be terrifying going to a vet practice and being like, hi, I wanted to do some work experience, but just go in there being like, the worst they'll say is no, and it's not the end of the world. We move. So yeah, those are my ones that I keep trying to remind myself all the time.
I love them. They're good.
Yeah, I don't have a specific motto, but probably more of like, again, it's probably quite generic, but it's just that if you really want something in life, you will get it. And I think it's back to Steph, like, you might not be the route that you anticipated, but you'll get it. If you are prepared to have the hard work, if you're prepared to have the vision, then it will happen. There's just been a lot of goals that I've set in my, life, like, for example, to get into vet school, grow Animal Aspirations with the rest of the team, like graduate. And it's just things that if you're prepared to do the hard work, it will happen. It will work out. They'll find a way. And if you deserve it, you will most likely get it. Obviously, again, things happen for a reason. It might not be the way that you anticipated, but it will come. Good things will come if you put in the hard work.
That's
absolutely
lovely. One thing I just want to share with you, something that I've been thinking about recently, is this, like, you are more than your successes and failures. I feel like as ethnic minorities, you have to be, like, even just as driven individuals, I find like I'm always like, what's the next thing? Like, I have to be successful doing such and such task, this project, this thing. But it's like, it's enough for us to just exist. Like, we didn't, like, doing all this outreach work is great, but that doesn't like define who we are as humans, like we're allowed to just exist as well, which sometimes I find like it can be quite stressful trying to balance doing like outreach work and then like ambassador work and then like jobs as well as uni work, because obviously being a vet student is not an easy life. So I think just reminding myself that like I am enough as is, like I'm doing all these extra things and that's great and people are benefiting from them, but that doesn't define me as a person, which I think
absolutely
I just wanted to share. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I know you're both very busy individuals. You're working now. I'm going to miss seeing your faces around uni because you're going to be gone and it makes me so sad, but I'm very proud that you're out there living your best lives and I hope you don't forget us.
We won't.
Animal Aspirations for life.
I know, forever remember it.
Yeah,
we'll
thank you so much for having us on. Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely be at the next social. Thank you so much for having us on. Thanks for setting up this podcast. Thanks for, keeping everything going, keeping the energy there. You're going to do great things. You're going to do amazing things. And like you say, your successes and failures don't define you, but you're
going to succeed anyway, honey.
Exactly,
So. Don't you worry.
Yeah,
I echo that as well. Thank you so much, Olivia.
I love you guys.
We'll see you around. The veterinary world's so small, so we'll see you around for sure.
I hope you enjoyed this episode speaking to the co-founders of Animal Aspirations about the foundations of this organization. If you were interested in us and want to get involved, then check out our website, www.animalaspirations.com. Animal Aspirations started at the RVC, but we have recently branched out to other UK vet schools. If you're a student and you want to get involved, then contact your university Animal Aspirations branch to see what positions are available. We post a lot of content on our social media channel, so follow us at Animal Asp on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay up to date. Coming up, we have a lot of interesting guests and conversations, so stay tuned and see you next time on the Animal Aspirations Podcast.